Today we are going to be discussing how the lives of women during World War I heavily changed. Women's lives before World War I centered around the family. Women's jobs were in the home and they played the traditional role of a housewife. Women were always expected to listen to their husbands and were completely dependent on them. Before industrialization, marriage and family was a woman's number one priority. However, in 1890, cities grew rapidly and women began to be more independent. Women began to work outside the house and in the city, began to be more involved in politics, and began to have a voice. Women began to fight for the right to vote, for equal suffrage and alcohol reform, and more. Already before World War I, women became more independent and influential in the U.S. government. Women like Jane Addams, who fought for the social gospel and established the Whole House, inspired trapped housewives to break out of their shell. When men left for war, many jobs were left open for women. Besides the fact that women wanted to work for independence and a place in the U.S. government, highly persuasive propaganda led to women filling their husbands' places. Posters like the WWI that advertised for every fighter, woman worker, made women feel obligated to keep the U.S. economy maintained. Propaganda towards women usually advertised jobs in industry or non-combat roles in war. The government's advocacy committee grabbed the attention of women when the propaganda was promoted by women. The Women's Committee of the Council of National Defense, led by Anna Howard, highly supported the idea of women in industry. Women felt protected and decided to work. Women soon became employed in food, steel mills, textile and war industries, and as streetcar conductors, radio operators, and much more. Women managed to work all day and still took care of the house and family. Women who entered the workforce, which was over 3 million, adapted several new skills and became overall well-rounded. Furthermore, women became very responsible for the soldiers in war. Factories that usually made clothing now made uniforms for men in the war, and women who worked in car factories now made tanks and military trucks used in World War I, including that women stepped up to the plate when needed and were able to efficiently replace men. Not only did women work at home, but women also followed men to war. Women were allowed to enlist in the U.S. Navy and Marines. Over 12,000 enlisted. Women not involved in armies served as nurses to soldiers under the American Red Cross. Women served in countries like France, Belgium, England, Siberia, Italy, and more. In these countries, they worked in field hospitals, mobile units, trains, ships, and camps. Nurses had to face daily tragedy and tough living conditions. Nurses had to face amputations, infections, gas burns, etc. And working as a nurse was physically and emotionally draining. The U.S. Army relied on them deeply.
During World War I, women worked in ammunition factories and played a major and essential role in supplying troops with the equipment they needed in order to fight. However, working in these factories increased danger for women. One task women did in these factories was filling shells. This task posed many risks for women. One effect of this job was deadly TNT poisoning, which caused yellowing of the skin. Some women even died after being exposed to these harsh conditions. There were also increased health risks for women. These risks came from poor ventilation, exposure to harmful chemicals, and heavy labor. All of these things increased the chances of injury or even death on the job. Accidents were also very common. There were small accidents as well as major ones, some even leading to death. Many women suffered from gas poisoning in the factories as well. Lastly, there was a high chance of explosion in the factories. Being in a factory filled with explosives and weapons increased the chances of injury and death. Although working provided women with great opportunities, the dangers were also very high. As more women entered the workforce, the involvement and movement for women's rights increased. The main objective at this time was equal pay for women. Women saw it as unfair that they were getting paid less for the same job. They fought for equal pay for equal work. Men argued that women had special health problems and that is why they did not deserve equal pay. Also, women entering the workforce increased support for women's suffrage. People saw that women were capable of working and were also capable of voting. Many realized that women should be given this right. Women entering the workforce in World War I helped pass the 19th Amendment, granting women suffrage. As said earlier, The main fight during this time period was for equal pay. As men left for war, many women took their places in the workforce. They completed the same jobs with just as much as determination. Employment rates increased as more women, including many of whom who were married, entered the workforce. However, women did face a major problem. They were being paid less for the same jobs. This inequality led many women to be furious. Many men had also worried that their jobs would be taken permanently since women worked for less. However, as men returned home from war, it was easy for them to gain back their jobs and still get paid more than the women. Even after the men had gained back their jobs, women still fought for equal pay and still do today. During this time period, there were many influential women that helped out during the war. For example, Julia Hunt Caitlin was born in Maine. She was given many awards for converting a building into a 300-bed hospital right by the front line. She influenced many other Americans to get involved in war efforts. Mary Borden was another influential woman. Her selfless action of using her own money to open a hospital helped earn her many awards. She also helped as a nurse during the war. Another nurse during the war was Helen Fairchild from Chicago. She helped many understand what it was like to be a nurse in her letters home. Edith Wharton can be remembered for her great efforts to raise money for refugees of the war. Many people adored her and loved her for what she did. All these women are great role models still today. Their selfless efforts to help Americans during the war is what truly makes them heroes.